Chapter 16: How to Use the Power of Will. Among the many important discoveries made in recent times, one of the greatest is this: that man has the power to change himself and his environment through the intelligent use of the laws and the powers of his own being. Also, that he can build health, character, and ability to almost any degree desired. That he can remove from his life what is not conducive to his welfare and happiness. That he can gain possession of more and more of that which is conducive to his welfare and happiness. That the possibilities within him have no limitations whatever, and that there is evidently no end to what he can do in the growth and development of himself and the world in which he lives. The principles of this discovery have been demonstrated by thousands. Results have been secured in every known field of life and human action. Some of these results have been so extraordinary as to appear miraculous, and accordingly, new philosophies and new systems of thought are taking shape and form with these results as cardinal doctrines, while the human world is changing more or less to harmonize with the new conception of man. We no longer submit to things as they are. We no longer permit our minds to accept adversity in a meek and lowly spirit. We no longer think that we have to give up to what appears to be inevitable, because we have discovered that man holds the destiny of his own life in his own hands. Man is supreme in his own life and in his own world. This is a fact that we now know. He may therefore have his own way in practically everything. He may form his own ideals and make them come true. He may plan his own future and realize everything in general, and most things in particular, as expected. He has the intellect to understand the principle and the power to apply the law. But here, we meet a great and perplexing problem. Among the many who have tried to understand the principle and apply the law, thousands have secured the results desired, but other thousands have not. They have either failed wholly or in part to produce those changes in themselves or in their environments for which they have labored so faithfully. They have seemingly done their part and have done it just as well as those who are more successful. Why they should fail may therefore seem difficult to understand, but the real reason is easily comprehended. There are many powers in man, but there is only one power that has controlling power, and that power is the will. The purpose of the will is to control and direct all the other powers of man. That is, it should direct those powers so as to cause them all to do what we want them to do. Since there is no limit to man's inherent capacity, and since the subconscious cannot be exhausted neither in quantity of power nor in varieties of power, is it evident that man can do with his life whatever he may desire, provided he can cause all these powers to do what he may wish to have done, and he can. The controlling power of the will can cause any other power in man to do whatever the will may direct it to do. But this controlling power of the will must be used not simply to control for the sake of exercising control, but for the purpose of turning the other powers in man into those channels of action where the results desired may be produced. When man undertakes to change himself or his environments, every power in his system must be directed so to act as to promote that change. And the first power to be so directed is the power of thought. The mind is creative, and its powers can create the change desired when properly directed. This is a fact, however, that is fully recognized by all who have taken up the science and art of applied idealism, and they have almost without exception given their mental powers the direction required. But they have, in too many instances, neglected to give that same direction to their other powers, and here we find the cause of the failure. To direct the mind to think and act along scientific and constructive lines is the first essential. But the power of such thought will not produce any change in man until his personality is directed to live and express those elements and factors that are contained within such line of thinking. The idealist wills to think, but does not always will to do. And the reason is that he believes that right action will invariably follow right thought. But this is not always true. Thought never becomes action unless the same will to think also wills to act. The complete will, that is, the full use of the will, controls both thought and action and must act in both in order to produce results. The creation of a new idea is not necessarily followed by the expression of that idea, because the will that wills to create an idea does not will to express that idea unless so directed by the mind. Some minds naturally combine the will to think with the will to act, and it is such minds that have such good results both in the science of applied idealism and in the practical psychology, frequently but with little effort. Those minds that fail to secure external changes for the better after they have changed their thought for the better fail because they do not combine naturally the will to think with the will to do. In these minds, the will is not fully applied. That is, it may will to think the ideal, but it does not always will to work out the ideal in tangible action. But when the will is so trained that it invariably wills to do what it has willed to think, every change in thought will positively be followed by a corresponding change in external conditions. Man is as he thinks, but he is not the product of all his thought. The only thought that gives formation to the character, the mentality and the personality of man, is the thought that contains the will to express itself. All other thought, therefore, is useless, and to create thought and not give that thought the will to express itself is to waste both time and energy. The larger part of the thought created in the average mind is of this kind. It takes shape in the mind, but does not contain the will to work itself out into real, tangible results. The path to greater power of mind and personality, therefore, may be found first in training the mind to think only constructive thought, and second, in giving every thought the will to act. Right thinking will produce right conditions in mind and body only when the will to act is just as strong and just as deeply felt as the will to think. Constructive thinking will promote the advancement of man both in attainment and in achievement whenever the desire to work out the ideal is just as positive as the desire to imagine the ideal. And all thinking that pictures the greater and the better, and that is animated with a positive desire to attain the greater and the better, is constructive thinking. And all thinking is right that is based upon the principles that the ideal of everything contains the power to become real. But in applying this power, it is the will that must be used in every instance, whatever the purpose may be. The power of the will is indispensable, whether the action be physical or mental. We can do nothing until we will to do it, and what we wish to have done in any particular sphere of action, we must will to do in that sphere of action. What we wish to have done in the mind, we must will to do in the mind. What we wish to have done in the body, we must will to do in the body. What we do in some part of the system will not be duplicated in some other part unless we so will it. The power of thought will work itself out in personal life only when we will to convert that power into personal power. The ideal becomes real only when the characteristics of the ideal are acted out in the real. The secret, therefore, is to act in the real as you feel that you are in the ideal. When you have seen the vision of the soul, will to make it come true in the body. You can. But do not try to will simply with the superficial side of will. It is through the controlling power of the will that you cause your other powers to do what you wish to have done. And this controlling power may be found within what may be termed the soul of the will. Give soul to your desire to act, and the mind will act through the deeper, interior, or actual field of the will. In this way, you will consciously apply the controlling power of the will, and thus succeed in doing what you will to do. The controlling power of the will is a direct expression of the superior man within, and we must always bear this fact in mind, that there is a larger man within. This interior man is the real you, and is infinitely greater and more powerful than your outer personality. And it is upon this interior man that you must depend for results. Whatever you do, expect the interior man to produce results and give the interior man full credit for everything that is thus accomplished. In this manner, you become more deeply conscious of the interior powers within you, and therefore can apply them to greater advantage. The superior man within controls the controlling power of the will. Therefore, to will to do what we desire to do, we must give the superior man within the right of way. In other words, act as if you were the superior man within, and you will feel that you are the superior man within. Then your greater power will act. You will place in action the controlling power of the will whenever you may desire to act, and thus you can readily do whatever you may will to do. Here, we should remember that the outer personality has no real willpower. You gain possession of real willpower only when you begin to feel that you are the greater man within. That power of will that can calmly but absolutely direct all the powers in your being to do what you wish them to do invariably comes from the depths of your life. When your feeling of life is deep, therefore, and when that depth of life is calm and strong, then it is that you gain that power that contains controlling willpower, and then it is that you can work out in tangible life every change for the better that you have produced in the mind. Many minds are so constituted that they naturally give the superior man within the position of supremacy. And it is such minds that secure the greatest results in every field of endeavor. Those minds, therefore, that do not naturally give the superior man the position of supremacy, and do not give the greater powers within full right of way, must train themselves to do so, and all minds can. There are greater powers within you than you have ever expressed before. If you will cause those powers to come forth more and more, you will steadily and rapidly advance, no matter what your work may be. If you are so constituted that you naturally give those powers right of way, you will move toward the high places in mind, whether you understand those powers or not. You will forge to the front because you can feel something superior within you that prompts you to press on and on, overcoming every obstacle and scaling every height. You can secure the same results, however, by training your mind to become exactly similar in consciousness and action to those who naturally give the greater powers within the position nature intends them to occupy. When you proceed to apply the science and art of practical psychology and try to produce changes for the better, both in the mental world and in the physical world, results will depend on two things. And in the last analysis of these two are one. If the mind naturally gives the greater powers within the right of way, and naturally gives every thought the will to express itself in tangible action, you have combined these two essentials, and results will be forthcoming. When the superior man within is in action, the will to think and the will to act practically become one will, and every mental change is followed by a corresponding physical change. But no mental change can produce a corresponding physical change unless the new mental change contains the will to express itself. And since real willpower is inseparably united with the superior man within, in fact, is the expression of the superior man within, it is evident that we must permit this interior man to come forth if we desire mental changes to come forth and produce corresponding physical changes. To be so constituted that the greater man within is naturally given this prominent position is well, provided that tendency is cultivated. But if it is not cultivated, we will have results up to a certain point only, and there will be no further progress. It is not necessary, however, to be so constituted naturally in order to secure great results. The mind can readily be trained to work out in tangible life any new or improved condition that is realized in the mind or consciousness. The will to think and the will to act can and must be made one will, and the power of creation and expression can be made so strong that the moment we discern an ideal, we can begin to make it real. In this entire study, we should always bear in mind the great fact that what comes natural to some can be developed in all, and that the greatest results come not to those who depend exclusively upon natural talent, but to those who take what they have, be it ever so little, and proceed with further development, never ceasing until they have realized the highest attainments of which they have dreamed. We all have some willpower. Whenever we move a muscle or utter a word, we use the controlling power to carry out such actions. We can develop this function further and further until we can cause every power we possess to do what we may wish to have done. And we develop this function whenever we will to act out in the tangible any and every change for the better that we have pictured in the mind. The principle is to will to do whatever you have willed to think, and to will not from the surface of your mind, but from the deepest depths of your mind. Thus, you will become in the real what you desire to be in the ideal, and you will cause the vision of the soul to become a tangible reality. We all have felt the power of the superior man within. We all have moments when we know that we are greater by far than the visible self ever appeared to be. And those moments can be made not only more numerous, but a constant realization. We can train ourselves to feel more and more of the greatness within and to express more and more of that greatness. We can do this by giving the larger interior man full right of way. We should proceed, therefore, to let the power that is within come forth. We should let it even take full possession of our entire personality. It will never lead us wrong, but will instead prompt us to press on, regardless of circumstances, until we reach the very highest heights we have in view. Act as if you were this great interior man. Think that you are, feel that you are, know that you are. Thus you give the greater within you full right of way, and the real you becomes supreme. Then you discover that it is all you, and that the all of you is great indeed. Henceforth, you can proceed to do in larger and larger measure what the modern mind has discovered that man can do. You can change yourself, improve yourself, advance yourself, grow out of any inferior condition into any superior condition, create health, harmony, and happiness in abundance. Live as you wish to live. Become what you desire to become. Increase perpetually your capacity to attain and achieve. Build character and ability to the highest degree of efficiency and power. And place yourself upon that high pinnacle of being, where you can truthfully say, "My life is in my own hands, and what my future is to be, I myself have the power to determine."